Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler. This is a podcast that was not initially planned. We weren't going to do anything tonight. In fact, we were going to do something, but it was going to be a Patreon episode where I was talking to Scotland fan James Scott, who, not that one, who went to every single game in qualification, and I was basically asking him about Germany and his thoughts for it. And we're going to touch on the Gibraltar game a little bit, but I was like, as I was planning ahead last week, I was like, what's the point? Like, we'll beat them 4 or 5-0. It'll be a glorified training exercise. There'll be nothing really to talk about. And then after I planned all that, it was announced on Saturday that Lyndon Dykes is going to miss the Euros after he suffered a knee injury in training. I believe it was a knee injury. And then Scotland struggled to a 2-0 victory over Gibraltar. Took them an hour to score the first goal, eventually through Ryan Christie, before Shea Adams, late on, made it 2-0 and made it ever so slightly more respectable. So, even in the group chat, there's a bit of, oh wait, I completely forgot, I should introduce who I'm with. I'm with Joel Sked.
Hello.
So we're going to do a
the
podcast.
Longest introduction ever.
We're getting good at these longer introductions now, without, arsing everything up and having to start again. But, so we're going to talk about both the main thing. We're going to talk about Scotland's form going into the Euros and ahead of the game against Finland on Friday, where we'll be playing at Hampden and the fans can see them off before Germany. And we'll talk about this kind of game in general and what it kind of all means, and also talk about Dykes and his absence and whether he should be replaced, and if he is, who should replace him. Probably, hopefully, won't talk for 45 minutes like we normally do in the main show podcast, but you never know when it's us. Once we get going, it's hard to make a stop. But Joel, first of all, I'll start with the game tonight. I mean, any thoughts at all? It's hard to a game to analyse too much because it was just kind of one-way traffic at Scotland, and Scotland being very wasteful, but there were aspects about it that concerned me still from a tactical point of view. I wonder if you had anything to say on
it. Not really. The Gibraltar manager seemed like an interesting lad.
As the guys were saying in the chat, good vibes. Good vibes off of him. Good vibes.
We're wearing a massive t-shirt, but no, it was. I mean, it was a struggle, but it was also it just looked like a friendly at the end of a long season played in what is very hot conditions for Scottish people. I've just trying to muster up the urgency and all that. I mean, I won't go OTT with the. But let's face it, it was 90 minutes of a shit. But it was one of those where I don't think we should read too much into it, and the fact that if we converted one of our numerous early chances, it just makes it all that more different. Yes, there were things that there were individuals and collective moments where thinking, I am worried about Germany. But then you mentioned about the form going into this tournament. And I don't know, just Scotland under Clark, they're a different beast when it's kind of competitive football compared to friendly football. So yeah, I personally wouldn't dwell too much on it. You kind of maybe start to like kind of pull at your collar. Oh, not sure about going into the Euros, but then at the same time, just kind of talk myself round, provide context, and just kind of look ahead to next Friday rather than looking at these two friendlies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's generally
that team's not going to start against Germany on Friday. Let's face it.
No, yeah, there's that aspect as well, that there was a bit of... So there was the 4 at the back initially. Well, there was the 4 at the back of this game. So I'm going to say initially, sorry, I mean, like, for starters, there was a 4 at the back system, which Clark is unlikely to play once we get over there. He was trying out Ross McCrory at right wing back. Don't think that worked very well, and I think we'll see Anthony Ralston start at right wing back against Germany, and unless he has an absolute nightmare, probably all 3 games, or unless he gets injured or sent off. And I mean, it's such a downgrade from Aaron Hickey, and there's no getting away for that. I don't think Ralston has performed too badly for Scotland. I think he's done probably a better job for them than he has since like his first 6 months at Celtic when Postecoglou first came in. Like he's performed better for Scotland than he has at club level. So that's it's bad, but that's something that we won't be doing. I am going to very much assume. Well, we won't be playing with a front three anyway, and if we are, it won't be James Forrest on the left, because that was something else that didn't really work very well. And John McGinn playing as an out-and-out number 10. I mean, a bigger thing to maybe mention or talk about is his form for Scotland over the course of this campaign, and that he's not looked quite as good as he did prior to that. And that's maybe a bit of concern, but his playing as an out-and-out number 10 didn't work. I wonder if this was the audition for Shankland. It's a team that you'd expect, like Scotland are expected to score goals against. Let's see if you get some. He didn't. He didn't have many opportunities in which to do it, but then again, it's also about kind of movement and playing a part in the build-up and helping to cut Gibraltar through the centre, and Shankland didn't really touch the ball anywhere near as much as you would kind of hope. But there was a few things getting tried out, and like you say, it's not going to be the team that plays. So there is that aspect of it. What is the concerning thing for me is that I thought the purpose in this game, when I looked at ahead on the schedule, I was like, right, okay, who are our friendlies? Right, okay, Gibraltar. Right, well, that's a bit strange because it's not like that is so far beneath the quality of competition that we are going to be facing at the Euros. But I thought, well, actually, we've kind of done that already. Where we played the Netherlands, we played the friendly against France. I think there was another like decent team as well. Where it was like, okay, we've had these matches where we've not won and been beaten, and that's maybe sapped confidence a little bit across the group as a collective. So let's just get an easy win. Let's just get somebody we can thump 6 goals past, feel good about ourselves. Because as I always say on the show, like a victory's a victory and a defeat's a defeat. Like context does come into it in one-off situations, but often, especially when you get like people talking about like so many wins in a row, like you build up that momentum or so many defeats in a row, as people are saying now about Scotland, like so long since the last victory. And yeah, they have stopped that. But I was thinking, like, if they do it in style, then it will just give them an extra nudge. And then if they can beat Finland on Friday, then you're going into the Euros in the back of 2 wins, bit of confidence restored. But because we've struggled so much in getting to this victory, it doesn't feel like we got that. And in fact, it maybe actually raises more doubts amongst the group rather than anything else.
I don't think it'll bring a lot of doubt into the group. I think the group's stronger than that. I think it's outside, externally, that's when people will start.
But that can filter in. It can filter in.
It can filter in, but I think it will take a lot more to filter into a group that's readying themselves for the European Championships. My hope is that it'll be the reverse of when we went to Argentina in '78 and the Ali's army got all like cheered off and everything was really positive. Whereas if we get booed off after the Finland game on Friday, then we're thinking, perfect, we're going to do something special. We're going to do something very, very special in Germany. Just you wait. Hopefully we're absolute minging on Friday. And I think, for example, if that's what happened, if we're rubbish and then Scotland fans booed the team ahead of their trip to Euro 2024, that's where I can think, doubts could come in where players are sitting on the bus again. We're away to Germany, just got booed off the pitch. I think that's it. I think Steve Clarke is a very sensible, grounded man, and I think that's been key in building or fostering this mentality within the Scotland camp. And I think everyone will be sensible enough to look at, right, it wasn't the strongest 11. There was no Kieran Tierney. There was no Scott McTominay for starts. There has it's just been a long season. Players have just kind of been getting into the camp. It was against a team that Scotland won't face. Won't face any team like that in the Euros, and it's just a completely different game to what they are expected in the Euros. They played in heat, etc. I wonder if he'll just say, we've got minutes in the legs, we've played a bit, might be rusty because there's guys who have not played in a few weeks. There's guys who've just come off right off the back of the season. So no, I think there'll be a lot of just sensible kind of discourse within the camp, and probably the message will be just ignore any of the external noise.
I wonder. I was thinking this during the game. So yeah, I certainly agree that it's not going to be this type of performance and the type of performance we've seen against like Northern Ireland at home, for instance, and you can even say like Republic of Ireland as well, like during the Nations League, and even Cyprus at home. And in the last qualification campaign, and you can go back even further, Israel when he first came in, probably another couple of examples I'm forgetting, that there is a real trend of us struggling under Steve Clarke in these types of matches where the team have to go out and break down their opponent and are expected to take their game to their opponent and are expected to go into not only to win, but to win with a fair degree of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And we always seem to struggle in that. Now, it's not going to be a problem for the Euros. Where I'm worried about is beyond the Euros, going into like the next qualification campaign, because we will be in a higher seed. There will be teams that we're expected to go and beat. And I think we were almost like the last campaign, we were cursing our luck because Georgia and Norway were like better than the seeds that they had. Maybe that was exactly what we needed. Maybe we needed teams that fancied their chances against us, and for good reason. Maybe we'll come a cropper, and it is something that Clarke. It does concern me kind of going forward. But then again, I may be thinking too far ahead.
You're the only man. You're the only man in the entire country who's thinking beyond the Euros. Oh no! What about that? What about the Nations League against Poland, Croatia, and Portugal ahead of the World Cup?
I was talking about Nations League because those are exactly the type of games again where we might actually thrive in under Clarke. But it's beyond that. It's the next qualification campaign for the World Cup. And you have to think ahead. I want to get to a World Cup, Joe.
That's fine, but I think park it until Euro 2024 is over, and then when we're playing in the Nations League and maybe struggling or doing really well, that's when you speculate in terms of, right, what are we going to do against the lesser nations where we struggle against. But I do get your point that this team is set up to definitely to play against different opposition. And you look at the two games I think Scotland will really relish in Euros is Germany. We're massive underdogs. We're playing against the hosts on the opening game. That's just built up for Scotland to do really well. And then Switzerland, again, a team really streetwise and know how to qualify from groups in tournaments. And again, I think that's where Scotland, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them, especially if we lose the opening game. And it's on Scotland to be streetwise as well and to battle and to get in about them. I think those are the two games where there is where Scotland will relish it. It's more, again, and now I'm getting ahead of myself, the third game against Hungary, that's one I kind of wary about, where there could be a hell of a lot of pressure and Scotland would be favourites.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to, like, when you derided my point there for thinking too far ahead, that it could, like we say, that it's unlikely, we think it's unlikely, but there could easily be a scenario where we go into that final game against Hungary. Hungary have beaten Switzerland, for instance. Just need a draw for their final game. That'll definitely see them through. Don't want to lose. Like, I mean, with so many third place teams going through, that might not be a scenario, but there could be a scenario where Hungary are right. We're just going to play for a draw here. We're going to dare Scotland to break us down because Scotland have shown, and they'll have evidence. They'll have this evidence they can look at and say, right, if we do this, we're going to frustrate them. They can't really do much except from throw balls into the penalty area. And I think that was the thing that I meant to mention earlier about the Gibraltar game, which I didn't. The only tactical thing I saw, we only created chances by putting balls in the box. We didn't cut them open at no point. That's Gibraltar. Like,
I know
that's a bit of concern, because going into a final game, if we need to win it, then you don't want to just be relying on set pieces. You want to be able to create moves that do cut teams open. And yes, we have done it in the recent past and probably would be able to do it again. But with the attack just not functioning very well at the moment, and again, you go back to the Northern Ireland game as another example, it's just a bit concerning.
Yeah, I get that. I was going to try and bring context in with not breaking down Gibraltar, but then I realised it is Gibraltar, so it doesn't matter if Kieran Tierney's not there and playing a different formation and not really got real creative individuals other than probably Christie, because I wouldn't say John McGinn's a real creator. He's more chaotic and dynamic than someone who's going to open defences up. But yeah, that's that was a concern tactically. I mean, you talked about like Hungary needing a draw, and you just look at the group, and something is pulling me. Even though I'm still relatively confident of us getting through, something is still pulling me towards back to 1998 World Cup, where you maybe put up a good fight against in the opening game, lose narrowly, and then you get a draw against Switzerland. Oh, that's a good point. Just need to win against win against Hungary, and we're through, and then we beat 3-0.
See, when you're talking about the Switzerland game there, I was thinking in my head, I was like, I could almost guarantee at this point that middle game is finishing 0-0.
Yeah, I know. It's one of your Switzerland. You're like, yeah, we'll take that because we've already beaten Hungary in the opening game. So yeah. 30 years' time, Steve Clark's talking about how they've had they got more corners in Hungary. Didn't deserve to lose it.
That reference there is Craig Brown, which he said many times that we were the better team against Morocco because Scotland had more corners. And when he actually came on A View for the Terrace, he had a bit of paper. Was it laminated?
He had screeds of paper. Yeah, it was what a lovely man.
Yes. So sorely missed. Right, I think we've done everything there is to say about the match against Gibraltar. Obviously, we hope that things are a bit better against Finland on Friday, but let's look at the big news. I mean, it should also be mentioned that Liam Cooper went out of the game with this one. I think Craig Anderson summed it up the best when he said that's probably a bigger blow to Liam Cooper if he is out injured for the Euros than it is to Scotland.
Stephen Kingsley time.
I was going to say, we probably already have too many left-sided centre-halves. So Scott McKenna's there. Greg Taylor's a kind of break-in case of emergency scenario that I doubt would do much. And yeah, exactly. There's a if something else freak happened before we have to fully name our final squad, then Stephen Kingsley is an option as well. So that's not a big deal. But the big headline is Lyndon Dykes missing the tournament. I mean, absolutely gutted for the guy. I mean, you'd be gutted for Liam Cooper as well, but Dykes has just played such a big part in Scotland's renaissance over recent seasons. Something I think you cannot deny, regardless of what you think of him as a player. I know he's quite Marmite amongst the Scotland fans. What's your take on him going down and not being there for us?
The more I thought about it, the more frustrated or disappointed or annoyed that he's not going to be there. Like when it first happened, I was like, don't worry, we've got Lauren Shanklin's only striker Scotland need. But you look at the tournament, and it's more than just what he is as a player. And I think it's like what he means. You talked about him being just like so important in Scotland's renaissance. He's one of the most important figures, key figures up there with Kieran Tierney. Looks like Kieran Tierney, unbelievable player, and getting that balance and the way it's tactically worked with him and Robertson. Dykes has just brought a feeling. I know he's Australian, but he just feels like he epitomises, personifies the Tartan Army, and just the way he plays, his personality, and he just comes up with like big moments. And you look at what we're going to come up against in Euros, or it's three massive big games that you just think he's the man for those occasions when Scotland need it. I was talking to a mate earlier on, and we're talking about how big a blow it was, and I don't think there's any, and I was saying I don't think there's any game that sums Dykes up more than the game in Norway where he was hopeless, and you're just like, just get him off, because looking at it, he's technically probably one of the worst footballers in the squad, but then just out of nowhere he comes up with the scruffiest. It was a good finish, but kind of like just a Dykes goal, and then the most beautiful touch to set up Kane McLean as well. And you're just thinking he's a clutch performer for Scotland, and he just comes up with big moments. His goal, his record is for a Scotland striker is very, very good, and I just think he, while maybe not talent wise, elevates the team. I just think his presence, his personality, and what he brings to the qualities he does have that's different to other players in the squad does elevate the team.
I think he's a huge miss for the Germany game in particular. I think he would have started that match, and I think he should have started that match. He showed in both games against Spain. That's exactly the type of game you want him for, where you're not going to get a lot of the ball. You're going to be camped in your own half for a lot of it. And when you put it forward, you're going to need somebody that's going to, by hook or by crook, and that's the way that Dykes does it. It's not a lot of, silky. Silky is probably the rubbish way of putting it. It's not a lot of touches like these continental strikers that are like 6'4", where they just kill it with one touch and they hold the ball up that way and they roll it with their foot. They turn their man. Dykes isn't going to do that. What he is going to do is he's going to run around like daft, and he's going to cause a lot of problems for defenders. And even if he's not winning the initial ball, if he's not winning a flick on, if he's not chesting it down and finding a teammate, just by being there and by being a nuisance, he forces defenders into mistakes. He forces them to head it out of play when otherwise against another striker, they themselves would be able to take it down and play a pass. And we're going to miss that. And that does, I think, really weaken our chances against Germany, where I know it's Germany, they're the hosts, and their international tournament history speaks for itself. But it's a Germany team that have not had a great time of it over the last kind of couple of years. And I think there was a real kind of optimism we could go and do something. I still think that optimism exists to an extent, but it's certainly diminished for me going into that match without him. And then for the other two games, while I do think we're a better team with Shea Adams starting, Dykes coming off the bench is again just something to throw at an opposition. Like if you're a tired defender, you played 70 odd minutes, it's roasting. It's the Euros, it's the summer, it's Germany. And then there's this big mad Australian coming on to just ragdoll you and be like, what's going on? Who is this guy? So we're going to miss him in that aspect as well. And also, I mean, Lauren Shankland, I would be delighted if he proves me wrong again. I had my doubts about him like a year ago. I thought he was an excellent player for Hearts. Didn't think he quite had it to do it at the international level. Well, he missed a few chances, or he missed 2 chances and one very good chance. I did think that his performance overall against the Netherlands suggested that he could be someone that his game does translate to a higher level. But the fact remains that we don't have much evidence. As good a season as he's had, we don't have much evidence of Lon Shankland being there for Scotland. He scored that late goal against Georgia, good header, but it's a very small sample size, and you're only really going into the campaign with one striker who we have enough of a kind of body of evidence that we can rely on, and even then, we can rely on Adams, but not too much. So to not have Dykes as well, to not have that other option that Steve Clarke would really trust, and we'll get on to kind of whether he'll bring somebody in a second. I think it's a huge blow, even though I get why people don't like him. I get why fans don't like him and think he's rubbish, because he's just not a good technical footballer, but he is a very effective player, and he's been a very effective player for Scotland.
But you look at, going back to that first game against Germany, it's like Germany, it's not German defenders, it's like Matt Hummels and Per Mertesacker and Jerome Boateng, who were undoubtedly very good defenders. It's Jonathan Tah and Voldemir Anton, Robin Koch. Rubbish. One of them plays for Stuttgart, and one of them plays for Frankfurt. And who does Jonathan Tah play for? He plays for Leverkusen. They're pretty good. Okay, he might be good.
He might be able to stop Lauren Shankland or Shea Adams,
but not Lyndon Dykes.
Not Lyndon Dykes. So I think the final thing to ask is who comes in for Dykes, and do you think somebody will come in for Dykes?
Just trying to second guess Steve Clarke's difficult.
I've got a feeling he's not going to call anybody else up. And it's a horrible feeling because I think it'd be a big mistake.
Oh yeah, it'd be. I think you have to. I mean, he has to call someone up, but I don't know if he'll just see this as an opportunity to almost make it easy for himself and not having to drop. So bringing someone else in and then having to drop two folk on top of it. I think he's obviously said when they first met up, when he did his first presser after like when the squad met up, was if there was any issues, he would just use the Scotland under 21 side. So that kind of just all roads lead to kind of Tommy Conway. He scored in the defeat to Turkey. Sure, finished the defeat earlier on today. Granted, I do not know too much about Tommy Conway because I don't watch the English Championship, but he seems to be relatively highly rated. So I think he's probably the most obvious choice. But yeah, I think he should call someone up, but I wouldn't put it past him to not, and then almost use James Forrest as a forward.
Right, Ryan Christie was the one that came to mind for me. I think would be the most likely one. I mean, sticks James Forrest up front on his own against anybody. That would just be like, okay, so we're losing this game.
So I was more thinking Forrest as if he needed to go as a strike partnership. But yeah, it's right. Yeah, Christie's kind of played that role, or not, maybe not like an actual forward, but played in the forward line with someone else as well. So
yeah, aye, that's my horrible feeling is that he does that. That's his plan. That he's like, okay, in case of emergencies, I could use Ryan Christie there, because, and I think the reason why he would maybe do that is that he's just thinking, right, well, I'm just going with the guys I can rely on. And I know I said he maybe can't rely on Shankland because there's not enough evidence, but I think Clarke already thinks that he can. Because I think he liked Shankland to begin with, because he initially called him up and gave him his Scotland debut when Shankland was still a championship player at Dundee United. So I think he certainly likes Shankland as a player and does want him around the squad. But you need somebody. You need a third option. Even if you're only playing with one forward, you need a third option because you need, like, especially this is the Euros, this is knockout tournament football. Like, if we get through, and I know, like, people, like, don't want to think too far ahead, but if you get through, you want to go as far as you can. Say we get through our next game and then we're playing, and like Shankland's picked up a knock and he can't play, so Shane Adams has to play like possibly 120 minutes. You need another option up there. You need somebody else. Doesn't matter if you don't trust him or not. You just need somebody else as a forward, especially to throw on in the last 5 minutes. Think, right, I'm out of moves here. This is the last throw of the dice. Tommy, go on, try and do something, because sometimes it just does work in football.
Imagine we went to the tournament with 2 strikers and 4 goalkeepers.
They won't go with 4 goalkeepers, because you could take a 4th goalkeeper who isn't part of your squad and could bring him in. I know you know that, but I feel like saying that for the audience, because I've seen a lot of people be confused about that online. That you can, all 4 goalkeepers will go to Euros. Only 3 will be named in the squad, basically, because if a goalie gets injured, you're allowed to call up another goalie and make it a 3 again. So we talked about Conway. There's nobody really else, is there? Because Ross Stewart might have been, but he's been out injured all season. Only just came back. He won't have even if he has the fitness in terms of his ability to run for that long, he won't have the match sharpness to make any sort of decent impact. Ryan Hardy, some people have said he had a pretty crap end to the season, and I'm just not going off of his overall kind of goals tally for that Plymouth team to say that he's worth doing it. Kevin Nisbet has not had a good year at Millwall, and he's still someone that I follow on Instagram, and I noticed he's been in Vegas, so I don't know what condition he's going to be in, but does they sound too promising? And I mean, who else is there? Lewis Morgan. Again, like, Clarke's never paid any attention to the MLS guys.
Steve Clarke he still has a squad photo of his Kilmarnock team on his desk, and he just keeps glancing. And ever since Dykes has been injured, he just keeps glancing. He just sees the lone wolf It's time, Eamon. It's time to shine. Scored probably a third, a quarter of the goals Simon Murray did this season. But no, we'll bring you into the fold. I know what you're about.
And if we do just want a banter selection, Simon Murray, why not? Somebody that's just going to, if you're talking about replicating Dykes' annoyance for opposing defenders, he is maybe, I know it's a mental thing to say, because I mean, you talk about like technical deficiencies at that kind of level. I mean, Simon Murray he would be really showing up. But for somebody that's just going to annoy opposition centre halves and kind of provide that Dykes chaos, I can see it. I mean, it sounds mental, but I mean, you look at that Northern Ireland team that qualified out of their groups a few years back. I mean, they had a lot of pish as well.
I'm sure. Who were we talking about? Was it on? I can't remember if it was on a View from Terrace on one of the podcasts, and were we joking about Simon Murray? He could be our Hal Robson-Kanu.
Yeah. Not much worse than that, is he?
But Robson-Kanu played Premier League, so...
But he got worse as he got older. I'm pretty sure he was like a championship player at that point. Simon Murray's getting better.
Who's going to... Is Jonathan Tah going to stop Simon Murray? No, I don't think so.
There we go, we've decided. Get Simon Murray on the plane. Nah, not really. Tommy Conway, probably, be the most sensible one to call it. Anyway, Joe, I think that'll do us. Thank you very much for joining me.
No problem. It was enjoyable.
And thank you to everybody for listening. Later on this week, there will be... So we are releasing our top 12/10 lists that we did as Patrons this year because the lower league show was committed to being a Thursday podcast. 2 went up last week. I'll release our 2 this week. And then there is a final episode of the best moments from the Scottish football season, the podcast that I've done a couple of times this campaign with Tori and Sean, looking at the kind of craziest, funniest moments. There's something for that planned this week. And there's plenty going up on the Patreon, some end of season stuff. Myself and Craig Cairns will probably hop on Saturday as well to break down the Finland game. So if you want to listen to all our kind of extra bonus content, that's patreon.com/terrace podcast. Even on the £2 a month tier, there's plenty of content. And if you want to unlock everything, just hop onto the £5 a month tier. And that also gets you access to the Discord as well, which is a fans forum where people don't resort to petty name calling. And I check it every day, so that will remain that way. Anybody comes out with any kind of... If it ends up descending into, like all football forums do, where faceless people just call each other names, and people will be getting launched. So if you want some adult football forum chat, then I would very much recommend going on that. I think that's everything for now. Cheers, Joel.
Goodbye. Thanks for having me.